In just 4 days, Elden Ring Nightreign finally drops, and the biggest mystery isn't about the map, the mechanics, or even the bosses. It's the figure waiting at the very end. They don't go by Radagon, or Marika, or any name we've heard before. They go by only one title, the Nightlord. Buried deep in the lore, hidden in item descriptions, discarded timelines, and forgotten promises, are clues. And what they suggest isn't just surprising, it changes how we understand the end of Elden Ring. Some believe the Nightlord is you, others say it's someone still dreaming, and some think it's not even someone at all. This is every major theory on who the Nightlord really is. Let's start with the one that brings everything full circle, because it's not just about endings, it's about the price of walking away from the lands between. What happens to a Tarnished who follows the stars? Not the Erd Tree, not the flame, not the madness, but the cold, distant promise made by Ranni the Witch. She tells you plainly, with chilling beauty, what lies ahead.
I do solemnly swear to every living being and every living soul. Now cometh the age of the stars. So it was thee who would become my lord. Perhaps I needn't have warned thee. I am pleased, however. Thou art a fitting choice. Wouldst thou come to me even now, my one and only lord?
Not a partner, not a knight, a lord, her lord. This she names you in the moment the world ends and begins again. That path, the Age of Stars, was never just a poetic goodbye. It was the birth of something outside the system, a ruler not chosen by the two fingers, not crowned beneath the Erd Tree, but something else entirely, a sovereign of starlight. Now, in Nightreign, the Knox speak of their long-awaited Lord of Night, a forgotten prophecy whispered through the dark.
Long ago, the Knox invoked the ire of the Greater Will, and were banished deep underground. Now they live under a false night sky, in eternal anticipation of their liege, of the coming Age of the Stars, and their Lord of Night.
The language is unmistakable. Their Age of Stars, their Lord. They weren't waiting for a god. They were waiting for Ranni's consort, the one who vanished with her. And now, we find Limveld, a dreamlike land bathed in moonlight and shadow, where grace fades to the soft blue flames of the night. A realm disconnected by flame, faith, and life as we knew it. This is not the world we left behind, but it is exactly the world Ranni promised. The Tarnished didn't just disappear, they changed. And what they became is now waiting at the end of Nightreign, not as a memory or as a myth, but as the final trial. But if the consort became the Nightlord, what about the others? Because there isn't just one throne in the dark anymore. There are 8, and each one might belong to a different version of you. What if Ranni's consort isn't the only one? The moment Nightreign revealed that the player would choose between 8 different Nightlords, the lore community lost it. Suddenly, it wasn't just about one antagonist waiting at the end of the dark path. It was about 8 distinct final bosses. And the question became, who are they? Now right up front, let's acknowledge something. This theory has got a soft spot. There are only 6 canonical endings in Elden Ring, 6 routes the Tarnished could have taken. So the idea that 8 Nightlords could each represent a version of the player, it doesn't quite hold mathematically. It's a loose fit. But even if the numbers don't align, this idea still has teeth. Because Nightreign doesn't just hint at multiple realities, it forces them. And more importantly, the bosses we've already seen aren't just random monsters. They feel like symbols, archetypes, reflections of something deeper. So here's my take, a way to make this fractured theory hold just a little tighter. Let's talk about some Nightlords we do know. Gladius, the 3-headed hound, isn't just an animal. He feels divine, or maybe post-divine. The kind of abomination that could be left behind by a god devoured or broken. His form almost feels ceremonial, like a relic of some old ritual. To me, he reads like a creature, born from the Elden Lord ending. Not the glory of it, but the cost. A twisted enforcer forged in the fire of a dying order, the watchdog of a throne that no longer matters. Then there's Libra, part goat, part basilisk, part humanoid nightmare. They ooze imbalance and instability. Their body is twisted by design, their eyes stretched wide like they've seen too much. That's frenzied flame to the core, not in name, but in spirit. They are not a priestess of chaos, they are chaos, living and breathing. If there ever was a physical embodiment of the flame of frenzy, this is it. And finally, the Frost Dragon, regal, cold, almost beautiful in a cruel kind of way. The beauty of it only dwarfed by the cosmic power radiating from its frosty form. This one feels like it belongs to the Age of Stars, not directly tied to Ranni, but like an after effect, a consequence. Imagine the dragons who once served the Greater Will, now mutated and left behind under the starlit skies, freezing over a forgotten realm. This isn't a beast, it's a remnant of her cold eternity. These bosses may not look like Tarnished, but they don't have to, because this is where the theory bends in an interesting way. What if each Nightlord isn't the player themselves, but a manifestation of the ending they chose? Not the character, but the consequence. The monsters left in the wake of their decisions. Limveld becomes the proving ground, where your choices, your past, come back, not as memories, but as living threats. This brings us back, and we return to the idea of the multiverse. Not as a clean grid of parallel Tarnished, but as a chaotic spillover of power, ideology, and legacy. 8 realities crash into one another, 8 consequences crawl into the same dying world. So yes, the theory's not airtight. We've stretched the fabric a little, but once you start linking the known Nightlords to the path you could have taken, the whole thing becomes harder to ignore. These Nightlords are not imposters meant to play Lord anymore. They are echoes of endings chosen in the past, and they are watching you from the edges of the dream. But if these echoes are past choices, then who's dreaming all of this? Because Nightreign could just be a crossroads of fate, but it feels more like a nightmare. And one figure has always stood at the heart of Elden Ring's dreams and deaths. And no, before you guys get all, we've already done Miquella, I'm not talking about Miquella. This is the first of many. Godwyn the Golden. He was the first to die, which is confusing considering his body lived on. At least his soul was killed. A targeted, brutal death that shattered something fundamental in the world. And while his body was left to fester beneath the surface, warped into a grotesque tangle of cursed roots, the real question has always been, what happened to his soul? We never got a clear answer, and that silence might be key, because Nightreign's world, Limveld, feels more like a memory than a place. Structures fade in and out, geography twists, time stutters, entire zones carry the logic of a dream, or the confusion of a place trapped between realities. It feels like we're walking on shifting ground. It feels like we're slipping through something that was never meant to be. And that brings us back to Godwyn. There's a growing theory that he is the true Nightlord, or at least one of them. Not Godwyn as he was, but something new. A result of that soul death, reaching for form again. A presence that has clawed its way back from non-being and started stitching a world around itself. Not to rule it, maybe not even to understand it, but to exist again. You can see hints of it everywhere. The golden black root structures wrapping around towers and bridges. The way enemies seem to appear and vanish like half-formed thoughts. Even some of the bosses carry this strange semi-decayed grandeur, like they've stuck between life and legacy. And my take? I keep coming back to the soul death. Just because his soul was killed doesn't mean it was destroyed. We never see it pass on, we never hear where it went, and in a world like Elden Ring where nothing truly ends, I don't think that's an accident. What if that broken soul didn't vanish, but started rebuilding itself, painstakingly, piece by piece, pulling scattered thoughts together until they become places, faces, rules. What if Limveld is that process? The soul of Godwyn trying to reassemble itself through memory and instinct. That would make the Nightlord not a god or a villain, but the echo of a person trying to remember who they were. That's more tragic than terrifying, and maybe that's what makes it so dangerous. Because if this theory holds, then the final Nightlord is a being trying to return from absolute nothingness. A being not driven by grandiose things like ambition, but out of the fear of being forgotten. But what if there was no soul behind the curtain? What if these Nightlords weren't reborn gods or lost consorts, but constructs, dreams pretending to be real? So what if these Nightlords aren't even real? Not gods or fallen heroes, not even people. Just shapes, dream logic, stitched together for a purpose no one remembers. Because if you've been paying attention to Nightreign's world design, how it shifts, repeats, and folds in on itself, it starts to feel less like a place and more like a mind. A waking dream that's too lucid to escape. And dreams don't always follow the rules. They don't need history or identity. They just need a reason to exist. That's the backbone of this theory. The Nightlords aren't beings, they're constructs. They could be imagined guardians created by some dreaming force. Maybe Godwyn, maybe Mikola, maybe something we haven't even met yet. Each one could be the mental stand-in for something deeper. Fear, guilt, ambition, memory, a symbol of each of these made manifest. There's evidence for this in Nightreign's gameplay loop too. Before reaching the final Nightlord, you survive 2 days of combat and exploration. But the world resets each time. Bosses change, layouts shift, enemy placements feel like someone rearranged them behind the scenes. It's as if nothing is stable in Limveld, like the world keeps rewriting itself, depending on what you're supposed to face. Everything feels curated, like someone dreamed up each battle with a specific fear or memory in mind. It actually reminds me of Final Fantasy X, the way the Aeons, these summoned gods, aren't really gods at all, but projections drawn from the minds of the dreaming faith. They look real, they fight, they die, but they were never truly alive, just echoes of something remembered, weapons conjured by the memory kept alive through repetition. What if the Nightlords are the same, willed into existence by a god or something close to it, just long enough to hold the player back for something they were never meant to reach? And think about this. Elden Ring already introduced the idea that the mind can create powerful illusions. Ranni's puppets, Sevelus's fake people, Mikola's dream cocoon. What if Limveld is that idea pushed to the extreme? A realm forged by someone who couldn't face the truth, so they built a cycle to trap themselves in. How do the Nightlords fit in? Well, they're just the endpoints of those loops. Bosses with no past and no future, just roles to play. I'm going to add my own twist on this one. So this one's the most quietly terrifying, because if we're fighting figments like the Aeons in Final Fantasy X, then there's no redemption. No secret lore that frees them. They were made to fight, to slow us down, to give structure to a dream that doesn't want to wake up. Maybe that's why they don't speak, why their forms are so strange. They're not supposed to last, they're just holding the dream together, long enough for us to break. But some players think that there's more to it than dreams or memories. They say the Nightlord isn't an echo, it's a cosmic power, one that bends timelines, reshapes worlds, and watches from above. Someone is watching. Not guiding or dreaming, but watching, from above or beyond, or maybe even beneath everything. That's where this theory lands. This is more similar to going against the Elden Beast, or the Mother of Fingers, than just flesh and blood. Something more akin to a cosmic force. A being not tied to the Golden Order or the Greater Will, but to the outer gods, the entities that lurk behind everything in Elden Ring, influencing the world but never truly showing their face. What if the Nightlord is their envoy, their executioner, or even their anchor, the one thing that lets them keep rewinding, replaying, and observing countless timelines? Because that's what Nightreign seems to be hinting at with the structure of Limveld. The cycles, the loops, the familiar faces twisted into something new. How is it that bosses from other FromSoft games, from Dark Souls and Elden Ring, are appearing in Limveld as if they belong here? No cameos, no Easter eggs, full encounters with lore and presence. That doesn't happen by accident. There's a presence here that understands time but isn't bound by it, that knows about other worlds but doesn't live in any of them. If Nightreign is dabbling in multiversal fiction, then the Nightlord might be the one holding it all together, either by design or by nature. And if this theory is right, it changes everything. It means you're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. You're in a crossroads, a hub where realities bleed together, and the Nightlord is the gatekeeper. My take? This theory is terrifying in scale, not because of what the Nightlord does, but because of what it implies. That this world, this dreamlike, unstable world, isn't random or broken. It's designed to be this way. Structured chaos. By something that exists far beyond the Ur Tree, beyond the lands between, beyond even the Age of Stars. Something that you can't comprehend, that you are so far beneath, it doesn't even notice you. But you're in its territory now. And when you reach the final boss room, you're not facing a king, you're not facing a god. You're facing the system, a being that exists only to observe, reset, and do it all again. If the Nightlord is some cosmic force, maybe even a multiversal anchor, then who or what would want to summon something like that? That brings us to the Knox, an ancient people buried beneath the lands between, living under a false night sky and quietly waiting, not for revenge or salvation, but for something promised long ago. Deep underground, beneath the Ur Tree's roots and the eyes of the gods, the Knox have waited in silence and shadow, under the stars they created for themselves after the Great Will cast them down. And ever since the Nightreign trailers began to drop, players have picked up on one particular item description that might be the biggest clue in the entire game. And we return to this. It's not subtle. The Knox are waiting for their messiah, not a demigod or some distant outer god, but a lord, their Nightlord. And the one phrase, the coming age of stars, links them straight to Ranni's ending. She uses these exact words to describe the cold, distant future she wants to usher in, which raises the question, were the Knox not exiled for their heresy, but for their loyalty to Ranni, or to something older, darker, and far beyond the control of the Greater Will? The theory goes that at least one of the 8 Nightlords in Nightreign is the prophesized being the Knox are waiting for. Their true Lord of Night finally returned, a being shaped by their own hands or summoned through their magic, possibly a silver tear, modeled into a perfect vessel, maybe even a clone of Marika or Ranni twisted into their ideal ruler. And it makes sense in a terrifying way. The Knox never stopped experimenting. They created living shadows, mimic tears, artificial life. What if they spent centuries crafting the Nightlord in secret, a ruler who could restore their place in the world, not by force, but by rewriting the story itself? That would explain why some of the Nightlords don't have a human form, why they seem alien, genderless, fluid. It also makes Nightreign's structure feel purposeful. The days loop, the skies never change, and death isn't an escape, it's part of the system. Like you're trapped in a world that was already written long before you ever stepped into it. I personally think the idea of the Knox forging or summoning a perfect Lord of Night is incredibly on brand for From Software. It mirrors what the Golden Order did with Marika, building a god in their image, but where Marika fractured, the Nightlord might not, because this one wasn't chosen by some far-off god, it was built. And if the Knox are pulling the strings this time, then we're not in the lands between anymore. We're in the Age of Stars, which is their age. So now that you've seen them, the 6 theories that spoke the loudest to me, each one twisting the story in a different direction. Some are grounded, some cosmic, some were just plain unhinged. And in 4 days, we find out the truth on who the Nightlord really is, what Limveld really represents, and whether we're fighting for a future or just trying to escape a dream that doesn't want to let go. But the conversation doesn't stop here. If you want more deep lore dives, secret boss breakdowns, and chaotic late night theory crafting, join our Discord. It's packed with fellow Tarnished, lore hunters, and Nightfarers who are already piecing the puzzle together. And if you want to help keep these deep dives going, consider becoming a channel member. You'll get early access to videos, exclusive theory posts, behind the scenes content, and more. It's the best way to support what we do, and it helps keep the dream alive. I'd like to give a shout out to our members, those of you who actually make things work on this channel. At our Tarnished level, we have Severlight and Beast Sand. At our Demigod level, we have Dead by Gaming, Jack DeVoice, Daniel Ingalls, Star Scourge Danny Boy, Arrow, The Real Johnny Boy, Dark Sun Romulus, Philip Guerrero, Eric Honenberg, Wart, Neon Prime, Zeke, Totally Original Studios, Mecha, Syrup Galaxy, Jason Crow, Calicifer Gratoon, Free Ride Down, Sinjik 7, Panda Zai, Kid Doom 804, Silver Shadow, and Mike Hammond. And our 2 Elden Lords are Craig Bonin and Noah. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys being here. The Age of Night is almost here, and the Nightlord is waiting. Until then, be good to each other, and I'll see you in Limveld. Till next time, peace.